Everyone knows the classic story of our friendly neighborhood hero by heart. A nerdy teenager accidentally gains insane superpowers, learns tough lessons about responsibility, and transforms into that infallible hero who almost always saves the day in the nick of time. Whether it's in the movies or the comics, the storyline is usually the same shining beacon of morality. However, what few people remember is that television once decided to throw the rulebook out the window and turn this tried and true formula into an absolute teenage fever dream. It is exactly out of this chaotic landscape that MTV Spider-Man emerges. It's basically a young adult take on the classic animated shows, only fueled by raging hormones, bizarre villains, and a protagonist who makes nothing but questionable decisions. In this largely forgotten series, our vigilante gets absolutely wrecked by D-list thugs, deals with crazy stalkers invading his privacy, gets brainwashed, and even ends his tragic journey by tossing his own suit into the bottom of the ocean. So today on the channel, Spider-Man, the new animated series. The most unhinged, depressing, and completely off-the-rails animated series our beloved webhead has ever had. We meet the loser of the day, a nerd named Max, who is currently being kidnapped by 3 teenagers with room temperature IQs. They think they're pulling off a genius prank, but when they stop the car to stuff their faces with fast food, they leave the keys in the ignition just begging to be taken. Max, in a rare moment of courage and sheer stupidity, jumps into the driver's seat and floors it. The only problem is that he's blindfolded, turning the vehicle into a runaway steamroller that crashes through everything in its path. By pure cosmic luck, Spider-Man swings in from who knows where, grabs the kid, and saves his pathetic life before he becomes asphalt pate.
This is concrete! You okay?
The next day, Peter has a friendly chat with the Mega Nerd to try and figure out who the criminal masterminds behind the kidnapping were, but Max has the memory of a goldfish and hasn't got a clue. Instead of focusing on his own survival, this moron decides the best move for his future is to try and fit in with the popular college kids, just like you trying to get your crush's attention. The bullies, smelling the desperation in the air, tell him to crash a frat party happening that night. Max puts on his best loser outfit and shows up at the venue, thinking he's finally going to make friends and be accepted into society. But when the popular guys show up, they're bizarrely dressed as monks, and instead of a warm embrace, they blast him right in the face with a colossal jet of paint, ensuring the kid suffers the ultimate cringe and is humiliated in front of every single guest. Dripping with paint and with his ego utterly crushed, Max runs off furious. He stumbles upon a giant neon sign that conveniently has his name on it. Throwing a massive hissy fit, he tries to punch the thing to pieces, but fate decides he hasn't suffered enough yet and sends a lightning bolt straight into his head. Instead of turning into human barbecue, his body absorbs the entire charge, granting him electrical powers and basically turning him into a high-voltage human vibrator. Now overflowing with electricity and pure hatred, Max returns to the party thirsty for revenge. He grabs the first frat bro he sees and fries the bastard's brain on the spot. Just as he's gearing up to send the rest of the squad to hell, Spider-Man shows up to ruin the fun. The two start trading punches and lightning bolts all over the place. Peter recognizes the kid from the day before and tries to use the power of dialogue to get him to drop the tantrum, but Max is so laser-focused on revenge that he completely ignores all reason. Realizing that peaceful negotiation has failed miserably, Peter decides to play dirty. He tosses our electric villain straight into a colossal power transformer, forcing the equipment to swallow Max's entire charge until he's completely absorbed and vanishes into thin air. Silence once again reigns over the scene, but before the dust even settles, a street lamp starts flickering in a highly suspicious way, proving his energy is still in there, just waiting for the right moment to spark up again. While the webhead spends his day playing hero and rescuing random extras, he has no idea he's being hunted in real time. An obsessed ninja named Shikata is watching his every move, all because an eccentric billionaire obsessed with collecting exotic animals decided he wants to put Spider-Man in his private freak zoo, presumably right next to a depressing panda and a mute parrot. Shikata sets an incredibly obvious trap, and of course, our spandex-clad hero falls right into it. When he tries to save some easy targets, she throws a net, ties the bug up, and tries to pack the arachnid to go. They trade punches, kicks, and a whole lot of sweat in a frantic brawl, but she quickly realizes that caging the hero isn't going to be a walk in the park. Police sirens ruin their intimate vibe, forcing everyone to bolt before catching lead. But Spidey doesn't leave empty-handed. Pickpocketing a cell phone from one of the goons with the skill of a downtown street thief. Using his professional stalker instincts, Spidey tracks the phone's signal and finds the ninja. But instead of throwing hands again, Shikata delivers an exhausting monologue about how the only thing that matters in her life is honor, proving she's just an otaku stuck in the feudal era. She bails faster than your dad when you were born, and goes straight to complain to the zoo owner. The assassin throws the money in the rich guy's face, declaring the contract void. The reason is simple. She refuses to deliver the hero alive and will only take the job if she can slice the spider into little pieces, whereas the client demands the merchandise in one breathing piece. Trembling with fear of being exposed by an angry ninja, the suit sends his worst goons to silence the woman for good. The brutes surround Shikata and are about to send her to the afterlife when Spider-Man, suffering from his classic savior complex, appears out of nowhere to help the crazy chick who tried to slice him up 5 minutes ago. Together, they mop the floor with the goons' faces. With blood in her eyes, Shikata marches straight into the zoo owner's base and dispatches the poor bastard to hell without blinking. As she wipes her blade clean to leave, Spider-Man pops up again demanding answers. But the ninja isn't looking for friendship. One of her goons grabs Mary Jane from behind, who, as usual, was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Shikata issues a brutal ultimatum. Either the hero fights her to the death, or the redhead loses her head right then and there. Left with no choice, Peter goes into survival mode. The beatdown ensues until our genius nerd realizes the obvious. All the villain's power comes from that giant, long sword she keeps vigorously swinging back and forth. With a precise strike, he snaps the villain's instrument right in half. Immediately, the magic fades, and Shikata drops dead on the floor, kicking the bucket for good. With the danger neutralized and the ninja 6 feet under, Peter gives Mary Jane that wet Hollywood kiss and webs out of there, leaving the bodies and the psychological trauma for the cops to sort out. Our 2-bit hero is busy playing vigilante against a third-rate thief in the dead of night, thinking he's finally going to score an easy win in his miserable career. But since the universe loves to see him suffer, he ends up letting the masked bombshell slip away just so he can catch a bunch of thick, heavy steel beams that were about to crush some useless pedestrians on the sidewalk. The classic dilemma of either grabbing the babe or holding the hard steel bar. And our protagonist obviously makes the least pleasurable choice possible. The next day, Harry, the needy rich kid, decides to rub it in Peter and Mary Jane's faces that he finally found a woman who can tolerate his presence for more than 5 minutes. He invites them both to a fancy dinner at his overpriced mansion, eager to show off his new human trophy. But when the supposed queen of the preppy kid's heart steps into the living room, Peter's spider sense tingles. Not from impending doom, but because he immediately recognizes the curves of the thief who slipped through his fingers the night before. She introduces herself as Cheyenne, and the banquet turns into an absolute cringe fest. The dining table becomes a minefield of dirty looks and a palpable tension that would leave anyone sweating cold. But of course, our protagonist wears his cowardly good guy mask, so absolutely nothing interesting happens while they chew on gourmet food. Later, unable to swallow his pride after getting double-crossed by a kleptomaniac, Spidey puts on his tight pajamas and goes after her in the dead of night, crossing rooftops to try and pry a confession out of her about what she's stealing. Obviously, he has the intimidation factor of an asthmatic poodle and can't get a single useful word out of her mouth. Instead of being interrogated and begging for mercy, the crook simply flips the power dynamic, stomps all over the hero's authority, and sets up a direct date with him for the next day, leaving the vigilante planted up there drooling on the concrete. Like an obedient little puppy, the next day our arachnid simp shows up exactly at the agreed spot for their clandestine date. But the forbidden romance vibe is brutally cut short when the cops decide the two have had enough fun and start unloading their guns on them like it's a shooting range. In the midst of the chaotic crossfire and the hail of lead, the tactical force miraculously manages to put a bullet in Cheyenne. Before Peter can play lovesick nurse and try to play doctor with the criminal, the woman activates survival mode, vanishes in a puff of smoke, and flees to lick her wounds far away from our useless hero's sticky webs. And as if making a clown out of Peter twice in the same week wasn't enough, the next day she delivers the fatal blow to Harry. Without an ounce of pity, Cheyenne sends the billionaire straight to the emotional gutter, ending their whirlwind romance in one fell swoop and announcing she's skipping town for good, leaving behind a trail of absolute chaos and 2 suckers left holding the bag. While our masked nerd is busy working in the lab with Dr. Connors, they accidentally stumble upon upon a bizarre breakthrough in cellular regeneration. The kind of discovery that always ends in tragedy when in the hands of scientists who desperately need therapy. Seeing a chance to change his life, the doctor kicks Peter out early to get some alone time with the vials. In an act of pure desperation and zero medical ethics, he injects the experimental serum straight into his own vein to try and regrow his amputated arm, and by some miracle of pseudoscience, the limb actually grows back. Feeling like he's now the pinnacle of human evolution, Connors goes out for a stroll and runs into a third-rate thug robbing an armored car. He decides to play hero with his brand new arm but gets humiliated and knocked to the asphalt in 3 seconds flat, proving that cellular regeneration doesn't fix a lack of motor coordination. Luckily, Spider-Man pops out of nowhere and bags the crook before the doctor can embarrass himself any further in the middle of the street. The next day, frustrated by taking a beating from a generic mugger, Connors decides the solution to all of life's problems is to pump even more of this suspicious goo into his body. Simultaneously, the city's police precinct is attacked by a monstrous freak that destroys everything in its path. Spidey goes to investigate the mess but ends up getting completely steamrolled by the beast, which dips into the darkness before our hero can even catch its license plate. When Peter returns to his unpaid internship the next morning, Connors kicks him out again, and we soon discover the real reason for all this antisocial behavior. The good doctor has brilliantly mutated himself into a giant buff lizard because apparently mixing reptile DNA with academic frustration always takes its toll. Driven by irrational rage and a burning desire for revenge against Oscorp, the juiced-up reptile invades the company and starts hunting down the city's most useless heir, chasing Harry through the hallways like he's a fancy snack. But before Harry turns into Gecko Chow, Spidey crashes in, smashing everything to save his skin. Our hero realizes the monster is literally his boss and tries to use his famous peaceful dialogue technique, but the scaly beast ignores the free therapy and charges at the wall crawler with murderous intent. Right in this chaotic moment, the police decide to show up, making a hellish racket with a helicopter. In an act of pure desperation, Spidey attaches his web to the chopper and drags the hulking doctor into the sky for a forced aerial joyride. However, the giant lizard prefers a tragic end over being rescued. He slices the hero's web with his own claws, plummets straight toward the hard asphalt, and turns into a green pancake in the middle of the street, ending his grand scientific career in the absolute worst way possible. 3 random bums decide that the best possible gang name to use in public is the Pterodactyls, invading a corporate building with the confidence of someone who thinks dinosaur cosplay actually scares people. Our sweaty spandex-clad hero notices the commotion in the building, decides that beating up lowlifes is a good daily warm-up, and hands out beatdowns to the Jurassic crew, forcing the winged geckos to run away with their tails between their legs so they don't get pummeled any worse. But since the ego of these idiots is more fragile than your high school self-esteem, they get all but hurt about appearing on the local news as walking jokes. Their genius solution to clear their name is simply to hijack the damn TV station, smashing absolutely everything in their path and taking the entire crew hostage, proving that PR is definitely not the group's strong suit. In the midst of the chaos, the leader of this prehistoric daycare points a finger in Peter's face and forces the photographer to broadcast his ugly mug live to the whole city. The criminal puffs out his chest and announces he has planted 5 bombs in the building, warning that if Spider-Man doesn't show his face by 8 o'clock tonight, the whole place will turn into brick dust and ground beef. As the clock ticks and despair consumes the hostages, Peter pulls that slick slip-away of someone who desperately needs to use the bathroom after swallowing a bad taco, slips into his skin-tight suit, and reappears hanging from the ceiling. He gets rid of the explosives at the very last second and save the panicking workers, but the 3 giant birds use the heroic distraction to fly far away. It turns out this whole terrorist circus on TV was just an unnecessarily elaborate smokescreen, because 2 of the pterodactyls decide to go back to the exact same corporate building to steal shiny diamonds, showing that their creativity died with their gang name. Unfortunately for them, the protagonist captures the 3rd member who was left behind and makes the criminal sing faster than a gossipy parrot under torture. Knowing exactly where the other 2 pigeons are, our arachnid heads to the heist location and ruthlessly beats down the dynamic duo, ending the fossil threat once and for all.
Mind up. Try solo.
But the real mortal danger comes when it's time to take a bow, as one of the rescued hostages decides to show her deep gratitude by aggressively locking lips with Peter, all right in front of Mary Jane. Considering the two were finally starting to spark some romantic tension, the hero learns the hard way that defusing 5 lethal explosives is a lot easier than explaining to his crush exactly why a random extra is swallowing his saliva in public. Our useless protagonist gets a college lab partner named Christina, but the girl already proves she's got a few screws loose when she drags the nerd into her bedroom. The plan wasn't romantic at all, since she tries to plug his head into a bizarre homemade mind-reading helmet. But thanks to the spider sense warning him of danger, the janky contraption overloads and fries the girl with a nasty electric shock. Instead of thanking him for not turning her into collegiate barbecue, she just kicks Peter out of the house. With her neurons freshly toasted, Christina starts having delusions and chats with an imaginary image of Spider-Man on her wall. The crazy chick reveals she has a sick obsession with the hero and confesses she'd do anything to play with his web shooters. The hallucination then suggests the dumbest flirting tactic in human history, telling her to throw herself into danger. Following the advice of her own schizophrenia, Christina jumps off a rooftop, expecting to be noticed. Obviously, the arachnid swings through the city and catches the girl before she hits the pavement. She immediately declares that they are cosmic soulmates, but gets a massive reality check when Spidey gives her a humiliating scolding and tosses her straight into the bottomless pit of the friend zone, demanding she stop this bizarre habit of jumping off buildings. Refusing to accept the rejection, the stalker decides to use the hero's official photographer to track down her prey. She stalks Peter and ends up eavesdropping on a conversation where preppy Harry makes a joke about Mary Jane gluing her lips to Spider-Man. Her jealousy hits Yander levels, and the voice in Christina's head orders her to eliminate the competition. She then does what any normal student would do on an average day and kidnaps Mary Jane to force an intimate encounter with the masked vigilante. Spidey shows up to save the redhead, but Christina threatens the hostage and forces the hero to plug the mind helmet wires into his own head. When the gizmo turns on, she gets a glimpse and supposedly discovers who's under the mask. Even with the big reveal, she keeps up her crazy persona and drags Mary Jane into an elevator with severed cables. The two start throwing hands inside the free-falling metal box, forcing Spider-Man to dive into the shaft to intervene. He manages to pull the redhead to safety just in time, while the stalker plummets to the bottom. Surprisingly, Christina survives the colossal impact, but the blow to her skull actually solves the protagonist's problem, as we soon discover her melted brain couldn't even process the hero's true identity. Two teenagers with zero survival instincts and too much free time decide to take a stroll through an old abandoned factory because obviously that's the best place to earn an early death certificate. Out of nowhere, the rusty machinery comes to life, grinding metal and activating gears just to suck the two idiots in and turn them into premium industrial pate. Lucky for them, the webhead comes tearing through the air, yanks the kids from certain doom, and shuts down the makeshift meat grinder before dipping out without understanding absolutely anything about that mechanical poltergeist. But the truth is, the ghost in the machine has a name. Max, the traumatized electric nerd, has decided to step out of the breaker box and return to haunt the city. And like any rejected incel who suddenly gets superpowers, the first thing Max does is go after the girl he's always drooled over. Instead of sending a text, he hacks into the poor girl's TV like Samara from The Ring, only glowing and shooting sparks out of the living room screen. He spits the most unhinged game ever, bragging that he's been eating electricity for breakfast to get incredibly buff, and that he'll soon be back to claim his beloved. But before making his bizarre romantic rendezvous a reality, our blinky villain decides to settle some academic scores. He goes after his old college professor with the sole goal of frying the poor woman in an electrifying torture session. The problem for him is that Spider-Man has a special radar for ruining villain barbecues and lands right in the middle of the mess to shut down the shocking light show. Right after that, the completely terrified girl, having had her TV hacked, warns everyone that the ex-weirdo promised to return. True to his obsessed psycho word, Max doesn't waste any time. He pops out of nowhere and unceremoniously kidnaps the girl. The guy's genius plan isn't exactly conventional. He wants to turn the hostage into a being of pure energy as well, because apparently, a flesh and blood romance won't cut it. They need to be two giant batteries to pull off a very intimate wireless voltage exchange. However, just as he's about to pump his maximum charge into the girl and convert her into a human lampshade, Spider-Man drops from the ceiling to cancel the wedding. Having zero patience to trade punches with a living power outlet again, the hero repeats his favorite tactic and uses brute force to slam Max straight into a transformer. Realizing he's about to be defeated by the same dirty trick, the Mega Nerd throws a monumental tantrum and starts overloading, trying to blow everything up in a kamikaze attack. Spidey, showing he understands basic physics, simply grabs the ticking time bomb and chucks the whole package straight to the bottom of the sea, instantly putting out the villain's fire in a gorgeous scene that perfectly mimics the sheer panic of tossing a plugged-in toaster into a full bathtub. Our broke protagonist is working his miserable side gig as a photographer at a mind-numbingly boring press conference, where the mayor and some random suit are giving a speech to a crowd of people with too much free time. Everything seemed like just another tedious day until a woman decided to spice things up by tossing a colossal bomb straight into the VIP guest's car. Realizing things were about to get a little too hot, Peter chases after the vehicle and chucks the entire car into the ocean with the ease of someone taking out the trash, snuffing out the explosion and the problem all at once. But the mysterious woman locks eyes with our useless hero and gets completely paranoid, thinking he recorded the exact moment she dropped off her explosive package. To make sure her secret doesn't leak, she sends her meathead goons to break into Peter's house. And, proving his unquestionable bravery, the kid hides in his own closet like a scared rat while the guys trash the place. When the thugs finally leave, Spider-Man tries to play detective and tail them, but he fails miserably and loses sight of them, proving that his tracking skills are just as good as his bank account. Later, whining to his friends about the break-in, they rub their two functioning brain cells together and deduce that the woman was only after him because of the camera. Upon taking a closer look at the dirty tape, they come face to face with the criminal and discover she goes by the name of Silver Sable, a high-end hit woman. Meanwhile, one of her goons spends the entire day spying on the little gang from afar. Spider-Man, thinking he owns the city, goes hunting for the woman, but ends up being pathetically surrounded by all of her guards. Instead of annihilating our hero right then and there, Silver Sable feels so sorry for the situation that she just lets him walk away in one piece. And the reason for this sudden kindness soon becomes clear, because the sneaky goon had already taken advantage of the distraction to kidnap all of Peter's friends. Diving into some government gossip, our hero discovers that Silver Sable has a day job as the mayor's assistant and realizes she's hunting a different prey. Out of nowhere, the phone rings, and she demands he meet her alone for a private chat, or else his friends are going to visit the afterlife. Spider-Man rushes to the rescue, gets his friends out of the jam with the ease of lazy screenwriting, and goes straight after the mayor's guest. Crossing paths with Silver Sable, the two start trading brutal blows. The assassin reveals that this so-called VIP guest is actually a wanted international terrorist, but the webhead decides to play the false moralist and refuses to let her finish the job with her own sword. In the midst of the chaos, the car loses control and plummets off the bridge into the void. Silver Sable dives straight to the bottom of the ocean along with the wreckage, while Spider-Man makes the bare minimum effort needed to save the mayor and the terrorist, ensuring the suits keep breathing to cause trouble in the future.
Hey, life in the big city.
Our arachnid vigilante of highly questionable intellect is intercepted by supposed FBI agents who hit him with that generic patriotic speech to recruit some unpaid manual labor. The suits tell him the country desperately needs him to snatch a revolutionary microchip, a little technological beauty capable of decoding any bank transaction and melting the national economy in the blink of an eye. The hardware is stashed inside the most paranoid building in the city, stuffed with trigger-happy guards, and the agents insist that only the hero in tight spandex can penetrate the corporation's impenetrable defenses. Since our protagonist has the naivete of a boomer falling for a cheap email scam, he doesn't even suspect there's more to the story. Spidey waits for night to fall and the employees to clock out. After all, cowardly breaking into a place when it's empty is his specialty. He slips through the dark, steals the silicon board of the apocalypse, and hands the package straight over to the supposed government without asking for a single badge. But when the kid goes to enjoy a little stage play cosplay to try and have a social life, just like you trying to leave the house on a weekend, he gets a brutal reality check. The lead actor shining on stage is exactly the damn FBI agent. The vigilante realizes he just cosplayed as a corporate criminal for a troupe of con artists and furiously goes after the guys. However, instead of dishing out justice with his fists, he gets an absolutely embarrassing beatdown from mere henchmen. They crumple the hero up like recyclable trash and casually slip away into the dead of night. While Spidey nurses his crushed ego, the walking mountain of cholesterol known as the Kingpin announces that in exactly 24 hours, he's going to orchestrate the greatest heist in human history, all incredibly made possible thanks to Spider-Man's pro bono services. The next day, Peter squeezes his single functioning brain cell and miraculously remembers a rumor about the Kingpin involving a helicopter. Using his sixth sense for trouble, he tracks the gang to the landing zone and tries his luck in round 2. But since getting beat up has become his new favorite sport, he manages to pull off the impressive feat of losing the fight all over again, failing miserably to stop the villain's advance with his fists. When the crooks climb into the chopper laughing at his swollen face and start ascending into the sky, Spidey decides to change tactics. He jumps and sticks to the aircraft's landing gear like a desperate radioactive tick, breaks into the vehicle mid-air, and grabs Kingpin's giant human bowling ball of a body, putting an end to the day's double humiliation and proving that blind persistence sometimes makes up for a lack of basic combat skills. Out of nowhere, some nutjob with marathon runner syndrome comes flying in, swipes a shiny jewel, and bails before anyone can even blink. Our arachnid hero tries to play vigilante and goes after him, but ends up eating his dust, completely losing sight of the Usain Bolt of kleptomania. As if the humiliation wasn't enough, the next night, the marathon runner of crime decides to show his face again for another heist. The webhead swears he's gonna catch the guy this time, but guess what? Spidey achieves the impressive feat of being shaken off for the second time in a row, proving that his spider sense clearly spent the weekend on airplane mode. The following day, during a random protest, Peter's paranoia radar goes off when he locks eyes with a mere janitor. For some reason pulled completely out of thin air, he decides that the master of the mop is highly suspicious. So our spandex-clad stalker tails the worker through the night and discovers that, shocker, the cleaning guy is, in fact, the speedster villain in disguise. But when the hero jumps in to confront the crook, the cops sprout from the ground with perfectly terrible timing. And of course, the police, flashing the combined IQ of a half-eaten apple, catch Spider-Man holding the stolen cash right at the exact moment of the bust. The villain bolts, and the cops instantly deduce that the masked guy in red and blue is the city's grand thief, forcing the hero to flee with a reputation dirtier than a chicken coop. Fast forward to the next day, rich boy Harry is trying to play the successful entrepreneur at a super fancy corporate presentation for his company. But the event turns into a circus when the villain crashes the stage and steals a valuable telescope, because apparently, swiping giant astronomical equipment is the latest trend in discreet crime. Only this time, Spidey was ready and intercepts the thief, having even called the cops in advance to clear his own name and show who's boss. Amidst the chaos, they realize the telescope in the crook's hands was just a decoy, and in an act of purely cliched desperation, the villain grabs Mary Jane. The redhead activates her premium damsel in distress loyalty card for the 1000th time, getting dragged away as a hostage, while the thief attempts a dramatic escape. But Spidey's patience had already gone down the drain right along with his pride. He flies after the kidnapping marathoner, breaks the guy's speed with a very well-deserved beatdown, rescues the redhead, and leaves the villain bundled up on the ground in a humiliating web so the police can finally do their job and haul the trash away. Two overgrown biker meatheads with the IQ of a revolving door decide that robbing an armored truck in the middle of the day is the perfect half-baked idea to get rich. Our favorite arachnid spots the mess, goes after the goofs, and wraps them both in webbing as a gift for the slammer. But since the justice system is an absolute joke, just like your gym routine that never actually starts, a suited-up lawyer springs the crooks from their cell before the webs even dry. Turns out, these criminals aren't just mediocre thieves. They're acting as guinea pigs for a backyard scientist. The supposed genius injects them with a miracle serum in hopes of turning the duo's peanut-sized brains into something remotely functional. Now smarter and completely juiced up on the mystery liquid, the twins hit the streets and pull off another heist. The spandex-clad hero shows up thinking it'll be a breeze again, but this time, the two activate turbo mode, fleeing at an absurd speed and leaving the webhead sucking his thumb and eating dust on the asphalt. The next morning, our nerdy protagonist keeps a clinical eye on Flash and notices notices something completely bizarre. The school's brain-dead bully is strutting around with the exact same neck marks the biker twins had, proving he also loves getting shady injections behind closed doors. Peter tries to squeeze the guy to wring out some useful information, but fails miserably because trying to get anything out of that hollow skull is like talking to a brick wall. Later, dependent on the magic formula, Flash goes crawling back to the scientist's lab. The crackpot in the lab coat tells him he needs to create a jacked-up version of the serum, and for that, he requires someone with a giant, juicy brain to perfect the substance. Using his cheap sweet talk, Flash lures Peter straight to the slaughterhouse. However, the one who busts into the lab wrecking everything isn't the helpless nerd but Spider-Man, ready to bring some order to the circus. The beatdown party is short-lived, as the scientist activates a floor contraption that traps the hero instantly, turning the hunter into caged prey. But by some divine miracle, Flash manages to use the only 2 neurons still firing in his head, switches sides in the middle of the chaos, and frees the arachnid from the trap. Completely off the leash, the hero dishes out clean hits and drops the twins without breaking a sweat, but the cowardly scientist takes advantage of the chaos to make a run for it, dragging Flash away as a hostage like a useless sack of potatoes. Using his investigative skills, Spidey tracks the fleeing villain's signal and intercepts the kidnapper, stopping the scientist before he can mix up another bizarre cocktail. With the criminals out of the picture, the hero finds the cure to reverse the drug's effects and administers it to Flash, detoxing the bully for good and ensuring everything goes back to the same mediocre normality as always. The NYPD shows off its good old-fashioned incompetence by transferring 2 prisoners with mind control powers, thinking regular handcuffs are gonna hold guys who play with synapses. Some random partner causes a mediocre distraction on the street, and the brain twins simply hack into the guards' minds to secure a smooth getaway. But our favorite wall crawler shows up and ruins everyone's fun. The criminals try to dig deep into the hero's mind to fry his neurons, but since Peter isn't exactly right in the head to begin with, the invasion fails miserably. Spidey smashes their faces into the asphalt and tosses the trash back into the clink. The next day, background character Andy pops up out of nowhere to let the protagonist know the prison system is a joke. The telepathic twins are already back on the streets and decided to host a rescue drive, breaking out the 3 idiots with a pterodactyl fetish and international assassin Silver Sable. When the news reports that the budget dinosaur cosplayers are cornered by the cops, the hero throws on his tight spandex, swings across town, and busts the flight-addicted morons for the 1000th time. The piece lasts less time than your paycheck in your bank account. Bright and early the next morning, the hairy hunter Kraven and the platinum blonde Silver Sable try to ambush Peter, but the Spider Kid is running on pure hatred. He absolutely demolishes the mercenaries without mercy and manages to tie Sable up tight, while Kraven uses his hairy legs to cowardly flee the scene. With his heart in his throat, the hero goes crawling over to Mary Jane's place to make sure the goods are intact. Things heat up, his brain melts, and he decides to say screw it and reveal his true identity. But right as the redhead is about to swallow the naked truth, Kraven pops out of the shadows like a flying cockroach, grabs the girl from behind, and jabs her with a needle full of lethal poison, killing the great love of Peter's life right in front of his eyes. The scene cuts straight to the cemetery for a funeral more depressing than your dating history. A mysterious stranger approaches the grave just to whisper in Peter's ear and feed a ruthless thirst for revenge against the hunter. But at that exact moment, the Matrix breaks and your brain slides out your nose. We find out that absolutely none of this happened in real life. This whole bloodthirsty telenovela drama was fabricated inside the protagonist's mind by the telepathic twins, who were essentially playing The Sims with the hero's cerebral cortex. The weirdo duo reveals that their only goal is to wipe Kraven off the map to avenge their own parents' deaths. Since they're way too weak to do the dirty work themselves, they decided to hack Spidey's head, planting the redhead's fake death to turn the knockoff Avenger into a rabid attack dog, and to ensure the protagonist keeps dancing in the palm of their hands until the end, the cruel truth surfaces, showing that the 2 lunatics actually got their hands on the real Mary Jane and are keeping the girl locked up in captivity. Our half-baked hero finally finds Kraven, the city's pet furball, and charges at him with the fury of a college kid late for the dining hall. He punches the hunter so hard he's about ready to sign the poor guy's death certificate, until the penny drops. Spidey's peanut brain finally processes that he's been played for a fool, and that it was all a delusion planted by the telepathic twins, who were literally playing The Sims with his head. With the illusion shattered and his dignity in the trash, he just wraps Kraven up and ships him off to the cops like a cheap Amazon return. Right after that, background character Andy decides to justify her screen time and helps track down Mary Jane's possible location. But before the protagonist can swing his web, the weirdo twins call to deliver a classic ultimatum, demanding he ice Kraven, or the redhead is going to kick the bucket. Busting out 100% of his used car salesman charm, Spidey stalls them on the voice call while making a mad dash for the hideout. He breaks into the place handing out beatdowns. The cowardly siblings flee at the first opportunity, and Mary Jane is rescued in one piece. Wanting to prove his worth, he chases the fugitives onto the rooftop. Suddenly, a woman sneaks up on him, looking ready to invade his mind all over again. Determined to prove his psychic firewall has been updated, Spidey bravely resists the supposed telepathy, grabs the woman without hesitation, and chucks her body away like a shriveled sack of potatoes. But congratulations, punching genius. It wasn't the villain at all. It was Andy, who decided to play stalker and follow him. Now the poor girl has all her bones pulverized and is shipped straight to the ICU in critical condition, complete with a seal of approval from our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Foaming at the mouth with rage over this colossal screw-up, the hero activates revenge mode, tracks down the mind-meddling siblings once again, and confronts the duo. He sedates the brother with a syringe. The sister flips out and tries to obliterate Spidey to avenge her little bro, but her genetic incompetence speaks louder. She makes a monumental tactical screw-up during the attack and ends up blowing the entire place to Kingdom Come in a pyrotechnic display worthy of New Year's Eve. With Andy on life support purely because of his aggression, and the entire city canceling the hero in the public square, the level of teen angst hits an unbearable peak. Whining about his own life choices, the protagonist walks to the pier and chucks his precious sweaty spandex suit straight into the bottom of the sea, finally accepting that playing masked vigilante requires a brain he clearly doesn't possess.